we didn't have to do anything when we fell in love. It was all given. And so, of course, we expect it to be like that. And when it isn't like that, we wonder if something is wrong. And most movies, romantic comedies and so on, the conflict comes up, they're falling in love and then there's something that interferes with them really getting together. And then finally they get together and that's the end of the movie. That's as far as we see it going. So we're not prepared for that. I grew up in California, in Northern California, did my graduate work at University of California in Berkeley in psychology. And then I met Maharishi and was full-time as a TM teacher in some capacity or other for quite many, many, many years. And during that time, I got a master's in business administration and a PhD in psychology. And then I was a psychology professor in Iowa Wesleyan University in Mount Pleasant. And then when I got together with Joe, I retired from that. And we became, as you know, certified shadow work facilitators. And we also became Braver Angels moderators. So we were doing stuff in the community, workshops and things like that. But my main area of interest has been with marriage and family relationships. And that comes out of my more personal background. And I think you're like me. I think you also had divorced parents.
Yeah, I did. They divorced when I was 2 or 3. I'm not even sure.
I was 4. There's a thing called ACDP, meaning adult children of divorced parents. And one of the characteristics that's often, not always, but common enough to be noted of ACDPs, adult children, is that there's a keen interest in understanding relationships, which makes sense because it's like, I want to know how it works because I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And, there are various risk factors for parental divorce, like some people risk for school dropout, drugs, and things like that. But there are also many who are high functioning, but where it's called the unseen legacy of divorce shows up in relationships, where it's harder to trust and harder to really know how to make a relationship last. And so a number of people who've grown up with that want to understand relationships. And that's my story. When my parents divorced, I was 4. There's a type A and type B divorce. And type A is when there's high conflict between the parents. And so the kids aren't so surprised when the parents break up because they've probably been threatening it a lot. And in some ways, it can be a relief for kids when the tension is gone. But then there's the type B divorce when the parents seem to be getting along fine, and then all of a sudden they break up. And so for the child, it's that 9/11 experience of out of the clear blue sky, you just got zapped. Yeah. And your world just collapsed. It just busted apart on you. You don't know what happened, and you don't know when that could happen again. And I don't know what it was like with your parents, but that was the case with my parents. So it was like I had no warning. I had no idea. And all of a sudden, my dad and brother were driving away. And as far as I knew, I'd never see them again. And my mom was completely checked out. And what happened with me is I just froze. It's like fight, flight, or freeze. I just froze and shut down. And as I got into junior high and high school, I got keenly interested in psychology and really interested in communication and how do people relate to each other and what is love and is it real? And so it's put me on that path of wanting to really know how to make a relationship work and know what love is. And that blended in with my own spiritual seeking of something that's absolute, that's not going to collapse on me. Yeah. And the two kind of fused into a search for divine love, something I could count on and something that was absolute. And so that was kind of the spiritual quest and my more personal quest, which became professional, of studying communication relationships while meditating and looking and aspiring and experiencing a more divine kind of love. So that's kind of the trajectory of my life. And I'm still on that path, but it's a lot easier now. And I've been passionate about helping people love each other, helping couples stay together, and especially parents, of kids, to be together in a loving way, not to stay together for the sake of the kids, but actually want to be together. And so much of it, like when I work with couples, is education, that people just don't know. They just don't know. They don't know what to expect, what a relationship should be like. And if they do, they don't necessarily know how, because they're skills that can be learned. And we're one of the first generations, and I'll kind of include us in the same generation in terms of this time in history where we want a different kind of relationship than most of our parents had. And the kind of relationship we want, which is a lot of interpersonal, emotional intimacy and passion all together, there's skills to make that happen. Part of what's confusing is that falling in love is effortless. We can't help it. And it can be we don't even want it. If we start being drawn to somebody who's maybe with somebody else, or it's not appropriate for whatever reason, it's hard to resist it. I mean, it takes a lot of discipline to resist that magnetic pull towards somebody. And it's different from just sexual attraction, because you can be sexually attracted to a lot of people, but at any given time, there's only one person who captures that intense, emotional, romantic energy that we have. And it's really powerful, and it happens all by itself. We don't have to do anything. And when someone's in love with us back, I mean, it's boom, it's hard to keep people apart. And later on, couples will say, well, we don't have time to do this and to do that. But even if you're married to somebody, people find time for an affair. It's like, it's so powerful that we find time, we make each other a priority, and we look our best for each other, and we're looking for everything we have in common, and we're doing fun things, and we're giving each other presents, and we're just all over each other. And it happens so effortlessly, and it's so intense and so powerful that that's what we think this is what love is, because it sure feels, it's like the biggest magic in life. When something like that happens, it's so powerful. And it does eventually, because it's like we're on a drug high. There's so many neurotransmitters, and there's a whole list of them. There's dopamine, norepinephrine, there's oxytocin, which is bonding. There's increased testosterone. There's PEA, which stands for phenylalanine. I'm not sure that's how to pronounce it, but it also is another amphetamine type neurotransmitter. Now, all these things are pumping through our system, and that can't last forever. But it's there long enough to bring people together, to get them past their defenses. And the way one psychologist put it is, nature set us up to meet, mate, and procreate. And once we've done that, then everything wears off, and now becomes you have to take care of this child that you created together.
Yeah.
But that intensity at the beginning. But the point I'm making is that it happens effortlessly, and it's powerful. And that's our image of what it means to love somebody. And we're not prepared for, although falling in love is effortless, staying in love does take, I don't want to use the word effort, but I will say attention. It takes intention and attention, but conscious intention to attend to the other person, which we didn't have to do at the beginning. We were obsessed over the other person. We didn't have to try to pay attention to them. We couldn't not think about them. But now we have to pay attention. What's going on with them? What's going on in their world? How are they today? What do they need today? What do they want today? What's going on? And so just clarifying what it is to stay in love versus to fall in love is one key thing. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the things about staying in love. And then let's see how things go. Some of the things that put us off from another person or make it more challenging, the differences that come up. But what's most important, that when people come in for marriage therapy or counseling, it's often because it's usually because they're having a problem. If they're not having a problem, they're not going to come see somebody, and certainly not when they're in love. You never see somebody there. But it's when they're having a problem, and so they think we need to fix the problem. The problem is what's coming between us. And what's more important, yes, you want to address the problem, but first and more important is you want to start building up the connection again. And I'll come back to why that's the key thing, building up the connection versus dealing with the problems. So building up the connection has to do with enjoying each other, doing positive things together. One suggestion that somebody made was, what was it, like 1 minute pleasure or something, that just come up with a list of things that are fun to do, like two people together. Come up with things that are fun. And if you can't think of anything, remember back to when you were in love with each other. What were the fun things that you did? And what were the things you liked about each other? So what are a bunch of just simple little things that make you feel good with the other person? And for someone, it might be a hug. For someone, it might be a gift. For someone, it might be that we take a walk, we go to a movie, we go skydiving. I mean, it's different for different people. But have a list of things that are fun, that are enjoyable, that make you like to be with the other person. And then find time to do those. Not every single day, or it depends how time consuming or not. But just that's like a technique for a couple to keep their connection, of do things that connect you to your partner, things that you used to enjoy together that maybe fell by the wayside, especially after kids. But remember, when people say they don't have time, that's just another way of saying I don't want to, because you find time for an affair in that same busy life, if that should happen. I'm not saying you're going to do that, but people, if they can do that, they can find the time for something they want.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Another thing is what somebody called relational vitamins. And this is sometimes you have to remember it because it might not be what you're feeling at the time, but think of things that you appreciate about your partner, you enjoy about your partner, you like about your partner, you're grateful to your partner for, and tell them. Especially if things get a little strange or a little distant, both partners feel unappreciated by the other. And so just to hear that, what you like about me, what you respect about me, you appreciate, that that doesn't take time. It takes willingness. And that's attention of, okay, what is it that I like about you? Or what am I appreciating? What do I respect? Like, gosh, you're a really competent pilot. I really respect that about you. It's not anything between the two of us, but it's something I respect about you. That's the kind of thing a person can say. So those are a couple things. Oh, one thing is, I'm sure you've heard of John Gottman because he's such a big guy in the relation. He's one of the top researchers and teachers in having to do with relationships and family situations. He's out of the University of Seattle, or Washington in Seattle. And he just says one of the first things that goes with couples is politeness. Just ordinary everyday politeness. Please and thank you. And just bringing that back into a relationship, being polite with one another. That makes a difference.
Yeah.
Makes you feel respected by the other person and not taken for granted. And again, it's so common for people to stop being polite. And that's where you have to be conscious. This comes back to the point of staying in love requires conscious intention, because otherwise we just get sloppy.
Yeah.
But when we're in love with somebody, boy, are we polite to them? And are we nice to them? Oh, yeah. So this is one of many advantages to having been in love with somebody, is you can draw on what happened then. It's like a template of, okay, what was I like then? Let me be like that again. What did I used to do then? Oh, I used to get you gifts. Well, let me do that again. Or I used to tell you nice things, or I used to do this, or I used to be touching you and affectionate all the time. And we were having sex a lot together. Let's get some of those made us fall in love with each other. Or when we were in love with each other, that's what we were doing, how we were expressing it. So let's remember to do that. So those are some things. Oh, another big thing is simply, this is another one from Gottman. People, we need attention. And we do things to get attention, just to get attention. An example might be, there's a really nice bird out there. And you can just keep reading tap your iPhone or whatever. Or you could look out and say, oh yeah, you're right. And then go back. But you've responded to me. You didn't ignore me. Or you didn't tell me, shut up, I'm trying to read. You were hostile against me. You responded to what's called a bid for attention. People make these little bids all the time. They might be nonsense things. It might be just kind of nudging somebody, with your foot, just kind of nudging them under the table. That's like a bid for attention. How do you respond to someone's bid? Do you turn toward them and respond, react to them in a positive way? Or do you turn away? Do you ignore them? Do you turn against them? These little bits for attention are kind of the micro interactions that build up a relationship. And when we respond, and again, it doesn't have to be a great, big, huge thing, but just an acknowledgement, that builds up good feelings between people. And it's these little, daily little interactions that can be positive, that build up good feeling, or they can be negative, that take away good feeling. But if we can build up good feeling, then when there's conflict or something that's not working well, there's a bed there of positivity to make it easier to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when there's a bed of negativity, then even something neutral looks negative,
Mm-hmm.
and we react defensively or aggressively. And that's the point I was starting off with, of why it's more important to focus on enjoying each other and building up positive feelings rather than dealing with problems. Because when we have that bed of positive feelings, then we're in a better position to handle the problems, because now we can be a team together. Whereas if we don't have that, we're opposed to each other, and it's pretty hard to work on things. So that underlying feeling, sometimes people call it goodwill. In the scientific terms, it's called positive sentiment override. We'll just say good feelings. When there's good feelings or good emotional tone, goodwill, connection, then you can deal with things. And also things don't bother you as much. Like somebody can do something. Oh, it's like, sometimes here's something that bothers. I don't know if it bothers a dear friend of mine. I won't name this person. When people slurp, like when you're drinking,
Mm-hmm.
This bothers this friend of mine like anything. But when a person's slurping who my friend really likes, it doesn't bother so much. But when someone slurps who this person doesn't like, then it's all the worse. That when we have good feelings, even things we don't like don't bother us as much. So we want to really focus on building this bed, this foundation of good feelings. And that's these little micro interactions. It's not a great big thing. And it's not a one thing, and now you've taken care of it. It's a daily basis of turning toward your partner and responding to them, and giving them these little relational vitamins, doing these little fun things together. That builds goodwill between people. It takes a good heart to do that, because if you're feeling hurt by your partner, the last thing you want to do is give them something.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a practice of loving. It's an activity of attending. For this moment, let's define love as the act of attending to your partner. It's an action. It might not even always be feeling it so much, but that's where a certain discipline, where people say work. I hate that word of having to work on the relationship, but I think I think of it as I'm choosing to attend to my partner, even if I'm not feeling it all that much right now. But I'm still going to respond to my partner's needs, think about my partner. So there's that. There's the whole thing of love languages, which I'm not even going to mention because that's so common in our culture that I don't think it needs a mention. But there was something else that just went across my mind. Maybe it'll come back again in terms of attending to our partner. Oh, here's what it is. It's how well, this is part of attending to our partners. How well do we know our partner in their life? And so, for example, do you know their best friends? Do you know what their concerns are? Do you know how their health is today? Do you know what they're hoping for? Do you know what they might be worried about with as concerns? How well do you keep up with them on pretty much a daily basis of who are you today? Not assuming I know you because we talked 10 years ago about what you wanted for your life, but give me an update. What's going on with you today? There's something that when various therapists came up with called the daily temperature reading. Of just, okay, here are like 5 points we're going to check in on each day, and it may be a 2-minute check-in, but of just, here's what I appreciate. That's a big thing, appreciations. And here's new information. It's just this is what's new today. And there might not be anything today, but there might be. Or here's something I'm puzzling about. Like, I haven't been sleeping well lately. I wonder what that's about. Or I'm puzzling about this new job offer. Or I'm puzzling about something going on in the world that doesn't make sense to me. Or I'm puzzling about the bank collapses and stuff. I'm just curious about it. I'm just informing you of what's going on in my mind. So you have like a cognitive map of what goes on with me.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that I want changed? Or is there anything you're doing that I might have a request for you to do? Like, would you please fill up the car with the tank with gasoline, or whatever. And then what I'm hoping for. And I'm hoping that this podcast is useful for people. I'm hoping that, whatever it might be. But just that's a simple way. It's like a checklist of things to talk about as a way of keeping abreast with each other. So you know each other and you feel known and seen by each other. And neither one of you is then taken off guard, like all of a sudden, where did that come from? Because I've been keeping up with you day by day. So those are some ways just to increase the connection, increase the positive feelings.
I really get clear on when two people first get together, what they think is love is that chemical cocktail. And it's so easy and it goes with, and then it sounds like if we're on a graph, there's this spike and then there's this long entropy that takes over, and that all comes back down. And then you're left with just two people. And the relationship is might be oversimplifying, but is based on as good as you want to make it. And the way you make it good, again, simplifying, is really showing up and showing up in the ways that you're describing here. So it sounds like it's a cultivation. I'm thinking of that principle that you're well aware of, as water the root to enjoy the fruit. It's like you have to, as you say, attend to it so that the relationship bears fruit. And sometimes you don't feel like attending to it. And the important thing to get is that what love is really attending to the root, even when you don't feel love.
Parents do that with their kids. You can be sick, you can have the flu, but you still get up when your baby's crying. You still get them their food. You don't feel like it, but you do it. It's like we don't always have to feel the love, but we can still nurture each other in very simple ways. And then when we're feeling good, we can be much more extravagant. But we can just simple things. And that's where like that 5 points check-in makes it simple because you have a structure. Okay, just check in on these points and I've done my duty for the day.
I've noticed something. A friend of mine said something to me a few years ago. I was talking to him about my relationship with Sammy, and who is my partner, as you know. And he said, he asked me, how good do you want it to be? It was an open-ended question. It was more of the attitude of how much you want to put in, and that's how much you get out of it. And of course, again, it's simplification, and there's a lot of things, and that's why we have people like you to help us walk that. But it's just the simple, it's just, I think what's clear to me is the attitude necessary for a good relationship is that I'm just going to do my best to make it good, because I have all the reasons to be entropic. And by it, and that's a fancy word for what do I mean by that? Just not put any more effort than I think I'm getting out of it, kind of creating a zero sum scenario with my partner, versus just showing up. I might not like my relationship when I wake up this morning, right? But how can I make it better?
You use the term entropy. It's like where I am in Iowa, where you're from, the Mississippi River's over here. So if you go and get a boat and you just get on the Mississippi River, if you don't paddle, you're going to go downstream. It's like that's the entropy takes over. You have to do something to stay where you are or to get further upstream. It doesn't just happen. And that's that confusion because we didn't have to do anything when we fell in love. It was all given. And so, of course, we expect it to be like that. And when it isn't like that, we wonder if something is wrong. And most movies, romantic comedies and so on, the conflict comes up, they're falling in love and then there's something that interferes with them really getting together. And then finally they get together and that's the end of the movie. That's as far as we see it going. So we're not prepared for that.
Right. Right. That makes perfect sense. So there's a couple things I want to talk about there. I want to see how this, for you, how relationships relates to spirituality. And I think that so there seems to be a natural tendency that we're going to go down that river if we don't paddle. In other words, the relationship is going to get worse if we don't do anything about it. Why do you think that is, that we just naturally devolve?
So you talk like there's a spike, like, here you're just going along and you meet someone, you fall in love, there's this big high, and however much it's biochemical is irrelevant. Good experiences, it's very high. And then we come down from there. This is all interesting. Interesting isn't quite the right word. It's all important. It's all relevant because it's a cycle. And so on the up one, where the spike is, this is where we have our idealized picture of the other. And we see everything we have in common. We feel like we're one person and it's special and there's a sense of unity. But when you're in that stage, it doesn't matter how much you know because you're convinced you're different. And you're convinced you're in unity consciousness. You're one with the universe, one with your partner. And that's how it's always going to be. So my colleague fell in love and he was in that state. And we're talking about these things. And he would say, but not me. This is different. And I'd say, you're saying exactly what we're saying people say. He says, I know, but it's different for me. Because it just seems that way. This is unique. There's special. And it doesn't matter how this person has been, if they've been a gambler or whatever they've been their whole life long, they're different with me now. So there's that sense of it, but everything is idealized. That's only half the story, because then what happens, especially when all the chemicals wear off and they don't prop us up anymore, we start seeing the person in their, I would say, demonized light. We see the other side. Again, if we come back to that in love stage where we are one, we are together, we are, and you hear people say, we're just so compatible. I've never met someone almost like she finishes my sentences. He knows what I'm thinking. We're one person. We're union. There's this union here. But in reality, we're two different people, as I think you pointed out earlier. And we're not prepared for differences. And we don't know what to make of it. And it's not like we're at fault or we're bad for that. It's just we're not prepared because we were everything was perfect between us. And now all of a sudden, you like to keep the temperature at 50 degrees in the house and I want it at 80 or something. You don't know how, it's not until you really get up close to someone that you know how different two people can be. There are things like with Joe, I just never knew a person could be like that. Really, you prefer to just eat by yourself, or it's like, whatever it might be. It's just, I never would have guessed that someone could be that way. And when we're not educated, and there's a lot of education about making a relationship work, and which, again, we don't expect because we think it should just happen naturally.
Yeah.
We should just be able to play the piano without ever having lessons, without ever having to practice. But with relationships, which are often the most important thing to us, we think we should just know how to do it spontaneously. And our partner, here's a real killer, our partner should know. If our partner really loved us, if my partner really loved me, he'd know what I want. I wouldn't have to tell him. And if I have to tell him and then he does it, well, it doesn't count. He's supposed to know me. If he knows me, he'll know. And again, when we were in love, our partner did so much that he couldn't miss. He had to hit somewhere. And that's where it takes attention of you have to know your partner. But so we don't expect the differences. And differences show up when you're with somebody, especially if you get committed. They can show up most commonly around money. People handle money differently. And one person might be more inclined to save. One person might be more inclined to spend. And you get together and you kind of polarize even more. One takes one side, one takes the other. Or it just may not be that even. It just might be we don't have enough money. And how are we going to allocate it? And you want a new computer, but I want a new dress or something, or a new kitchen appliance, whatever it might be. How do we handle that? And we expect the other person to be like us. And when they're not, then we have some explaining we have to do. When we get into conflicts, it's about things we're different. When we're the same, we're compatible. It's why we're different that we can have conflicts. And when things aren't right, and an example around how to spend money is very surface, but it's often more subtle than that, of where we're different. Trying to think of an example, I'm sure one will come to me. But we go into either, okay, I'm the judge and I pronounce you guilty. You're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You're accusing. Or there can be the diagnostic of, well, there's just something wrong with you. And nowadays it's, well, you're just a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Or you've got borderline personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
This is the current fad for what's wrong with a person. So we
Yeah.
can go into that, or we can go into, well, what's wrong with me that I'm with you and I'm allowing you to abuse me, or I'm allowing this to go on. So we get into trying to understand, because it's uncomfortable to have that tension, to have that conflict. And what's the hardest thing is to realize we are two different people, and you're valid to be the way you are, and I'm justified being the way I am. But to accept somebody, to meet someone and accept them, and then let them be themselves, accept who they are.
Yeah.
That is a huge growth. That takes personal growth, and it takes knowing your partner is not wrong or sick or manipulative. Your partner is different from you. They think differently than you think. If I did that, it would mean what would be, some people are very expressive emotionally, and some people are much more suppressed, or that makes it sound negative, except I'm on that side of it. But they're like the maximizers and the minimizers, and some really very expressive, and some are very understated. Let's say British and Italian stereotypes.
Right.
For me, if I were to emote the way some people do, it would mean I am really upset.
Mm-hmm.
For me to express like that would mean I really have strong feelings about it. Whereas for that person to express like that, it's just how they express themselves. And it's hard for me to comprehend, you don't mean it the way it translates into my mind from where I am.
Yeah.
It's like we have two different cultures. So a relationship is like an intercultural or cross-cultural relationship, because you're coming from a very different place and things mean things differently to you than they do to me. But I'm interpreting you from my cultural perspective, what it would mean if I did that.
Right.
So if we're going to go somewhere and we're going to meet at 7:00, I'm there on the dot. You're not there till 7:45. That means that you don't respect me. And that's all there is to it. Whereas from your point of view, for me to be so rigid about 7:00, or for me to be insistent on 7:00, means that I'm just really rigid and uptight.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't be like that. I'm not saying, I mean, just supposing.
Yes.
So we interpret people from our own perspective. And when it doesn't feel good, we have a negative interpretation on it. And one of the two big learnings. One big learning is this person is different from me. And they're okay. And I'm okay. We're just different. How are we going to handle the differences? That's another point. But just we're different, and that's okay. A second point is I'm misinterpreting that person, because I'm interpreting them according to my frame of reference.
Right.
And that's not where they're coming from.
Mm.
So I need to realize I don't understand that person right now. I'm misinterpreting them. And I'm attributing my own explanations onto them, that they're deliberately not caring about me, or they're deliberately putting me down. They're saying this, they're saying that. And whatever that is that they're doing, not caring about me, putting me down, criticizing me, that message, and this is where shadow work comes in, that's my core wound that I'm projecting onto them. So let me just back up a little bit, which is we are different. There are ways we're similar. Those aren't a problem. And those are ways where we're compatible. But we're incompatible in all kinds of ways. So when people say we broke up because we're just too different, not what's going on, because we're all too different from each other. What's going on is we don't have enough good feeling there to handle the differences. Now, there's some differences, like you want children and I don't. Now, that can be a real deal killer. Like, well, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are some things, or someone is genuinely abusive. I mean, we throw that word around a lot, so I'm reluctant to use it. But someone could be physically violent. Let me just say that, or someone could be into addictions or something where I don't want to live with that. Okay, those are deal killers. But that's not usually what people are talking about when they're saying we're too different. They're saying, well, we just, so many different ways where we have different ideas or this or that. But when the good feeling is there, we can handle those differences. So that's why I come back to the important thing is to build up the good feelings. And now we negotiate about the differences. So if my partner wants the temperature at 50 and I want it at 80, okay, we're going to come somewhere in the middle, maybe keep it at 65 or something, where we can both handle it, but neither one of us is really happy about it.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, back to the point. Differences are inevitable. Incompatibilities are inevitable. That's not a sign that there's a problem or something lacking or wrong in the relationship. It's inevitable. When we get into these tensions with each other, because we're different and coming from different places, it's pretty much guaranteed that we are not understanding the other person, that we're misinterpreting them because we're explaining it to ourselves from our perspective. And what we need to do is to realize, okay, I don't really know what's going on with my partner. Let me ask. Please explain it to me. And explaining doesn't mean telling me what's wrong with me and what I did. Explaining means this is what I'm trying to communicate. These are skills, and I'm referring to them right now. I'm not teaching them because these take practice and exercises. But I'm just saying that there are skills and skills to be learned, just like learning scales on a piano. There are skills to be learned about how do I listen and how do I respond to what you're saying. And the simplest level of that is when you say something, I repeat it back. And you did that with me today already. I stopped and you said, well, my takeaway or what I heard you say is, and I said, yeah, you got it. And if I thought you hadn't gotten, I would have corrected you. Yeah. And it's the same in a relationship. Okay, you just said this. I take a breath because I don't like hearing that, but this is what I heard. It's not fun to hear these things.
Yeah.
But did I hear you correctly? And then, so that's like this speaker listener, where the speaker speaks and the listener doesn't get to say their side until it's clear they understood the speaker's side. So that's one part. That's one skill of just being able to listen, to be able to hear it and repeat it back instead of listening to rebut it and what I'm going to say instead. That's a different mindset. Maybe in a debate that would be good, but not when we're trying to connect and trying to understand. There's also a skill of how do we express ourselves, because I can say, well, you broke all your promises to me. You said you were going to take the garbage out and the garbage is still there. I can't trust you for anything, which is very different from yesterday you agreed, or last week we agreed that you'd take the garbage out this week and the garbage is still there. I'm just saying what happened. I'm not putting all that extra stuff on top of it.
Yeah.
That is very hard for people to do. Very hard for people just to say what happened rather than their story about it. You'd be surprised how hard that is.
Yeah.
I was teaching a class once with these married women. It was a night class. I was trying to make this point. And so I gave some exercise, whatever it was. And this one woman said, well, my husband's a pig. And I said, okay. Now what we want to do is very specifically, what does your husband do? Anybody could see that makes you call him a pig. And she said, well, anybody can see he's a pig.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, she didn't get that was her interpretation. What was it? Does he leave his clothes on the floor, his beer cans all over? What specifically led you to the conclusion that he's a pig? That skill of how to talk without blame and judgment and storytelling, that's a big skill to learn. It takes practice.
Yeah.
It takes practice when you're feeling good, because when you're tense, it's really hard to keep your wits about you.
Yes.
So you have to be in the practice, in the habit of talking that way. um, it's not like you're going to talk that way every single day. You're going to share your feelings and your thoughts. But when something is tricky, you want to be able to have that skill to draw on.
Yeah, when triggered is my narrative for that is it's almost like if I'm feeling emotionally charged, it's almost like I owe it to myself to just express all the emotion and the judgments and not own any of it.
It's a lot to handle. And you're bringing up another important point, or more than one in that. I mean, one is, and I like that phrase, I owe it to myself. There's a phrase, we attack from the victim position. We feel victimized. Our partner has done us wrong.
Yes.
Again, that's our interpretation of our partner.
Yes.
But to us, it's the truth. Our partner did us wrong. But we don't really know what's going on until we find out from our partner. But it hits us. It hits home. I'm not important here. You're the important one, not me. You've done me wrong. And I deserve to blast you, to let it all out. That's how it works. That's why we need the skill of being able to understand what's happening here and to go through it enough times that we can realize, if I'm feeling that way, I need to release it. Let me go run around the block or do something else to release it, but not on my partner.
Mm-hmm.
As major theme coming up here, do what's in the best interest of the relationship. Not what's in my best interest, but what's in the, and I have to qualify that because people are going to say that we're putting ourselves down, and I don't mean that. But what's in the best interest of the relationship? Because I want this relationship to work, even though right now I hate my partner and I could care less about it. But ultimately, from a bigger perspective, I want the relationship to work, and blasting my partner right now isn't really going to help. It might make me feel good momentarily. So if I have that energy build up, how else can I release it and then come back and deal with this in a more balanced way? But when we get triggered, we're off balance. And when we get flooded, and this is a concept from that researcher I mentioned, John Gottman, if this is our baseline heart rate, okay, here's baseline. Well, things start getting tense and our heart rate starts rising and rising above baseline. And when it gets about 10% above baseline, we get flooded, which means we're not thinking straight anymore. It's just, and people respond differently. Some people, they just have to shut down for like internal repairs because they're flooded and they know, I don't, sometimes other people think you're stonewalling, that you're just shutting down, but I just can't handle this anymore. Or other people get to that point and they need to explode. I mean, it's either I implode or I explode, but I've reached my limit.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, so here's two people at baseline, or however it is. Typically, this is what the research shows, men get flooded before women do. So man wants to bail, but the woman isn't flooded. She's saying, you're leaving me, you're abandoning me again. You always shut down when we get into something real, because she's not flooded yet.
Yeah.
So that's a difference between men and women. And not, of course, not always, but in general, that's what is found. There's just something to be alert to, that when you're getting into something, you're likely to reach your limit earlier. And that's when, and it's be helpful if the two of you understand this together, so you can say, you know what, I need a time out right now, and then I'll be back.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to go and explode, chop down a tree or something. But I need to release this, or I need to recover myself or something. I just need to take care of myself. I can't be here any longer right now, but I will be back. Yeah. Hopefully before long. But if she also understands that that's what's going on, she'll realize that's in the best interest of the relationship to give you time to recover, and it wouldn't hurt for her to do some of the same.
Yes.
So that's like, there are a lot of these little points that are just educational that make a lot of difference in a relationship. And people just learn this thing.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, like the well, the discernment or the integration of doing what's best for the relationship, and that doesn't mean hurting yourself. But I really get that a good relationship is something that is, it's, at least for me, it's something that I show up to that's bigger than me. So it's a practice of, this isn't just about me. And of course, I should take myself into account and don't be a doormat, don't be self-sacrificing. But also, it helps for me to be not so self-indulgent. Um, to focus on something other than myself is also therapeutic, at least for me. And for some people, maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. But
Well, it's both. I mean,
mm-hmm.
there is the point of, again, boundaries, and some people have a hard time being able to do that. And they need to, especially with that person on our chart, that sweet one who's pleasing all the time,
Yeah.
they need to know who they are and what they want and what they don't want, and set boundaries. And that's very growthful. And that's its own challenge, is having boundaries. It's also a challenge in any relationship of how much are we together and how much are we separate? How much do we have our own separate independent lives and how much do we have our together lives? And that's, different people may have different desires. There's the kind of classic situation where the woman wants more togetherness and the man wants more space. You know, I mean, that flips around between couples, but often that's a one incompatibility, or it's be constantly renegotiated, or
Mm.
sometimes you were closer and sometimes you're more distant.
Yeah.
So that's another dynamic in a couple, is just how close are we, how separate are we? So,
Yeah.
okay, so there's that. But what you're talking about brings it back to the spiritual side, which is, we're born narcissists. It's just me. The world is all about me. And as we grow up, we realize there are other people here too. And maybe I have siblings. If not, I have classmates at school, unless I'm homeschooled all by myself. But even then, they're parents. But maybe they revolve around all around me too.
Mm.
But that doesn't work so well to get along in the world. We start realizing there are more people than just me. I have to expand my sphere of my awareness, my sphere of concern, my heart, to include other people. And a relationship is a path of expanding our heart to embrace another person with their differences from us. And that is, it's bigger than you or me. It's what we're developing between us. And like you said, you're not just being self-indulgent, what do I want, but what do we want? And that expands us. And in the Vedic tradition, that's the purpose of family life, is just to continue to expand your sphere of love, of caring, of concern, responsibility to your family. Then if you have children, or your community, the nation, the world, and the world is my family, is a Vedic saying,
Mm.
that's the growth of the heart. And to use the word God, we've told God is love. And a path of toward God is that path of love, of refining and cultivating the heart, which is very different from just hooking up with people.
Mm-hmm.
Really showing up, as you said,
Yeah.
showing up for another person. That expands you, that it's not just about me and what I feel right now.
Yeah.
I'm here for another person.
So going back a little bit, given that, as you pointed out, and I agree that, you know, we'll get in, we fall in love, and that's in quotes. It's a chemical cocktail for us. And so given that, and then it gets real, what are there practical criteria when choosing a partner? Say someone's dating, right? And if they know this about themselves, you know, can they can they look for the right things? Are there right things? Um,
That's a beautiful question. I have a book called I'd Rather Be Married by Al Crowell, and he has some criteria in there. And the only one I really remember is, how comfortable are you with this person?
mm,
So someone, because often we like somebody, but we're off center, we're
mm,
nervous, we're not comfortable. So uh, and Maharshi said, marry someone where there's deep comfort, deep comfort, deep comfort, or just that so that's like one important criterion. There are certain basics that can steer you away from something, like red lights. When there's a red light, which is like an example of I want children, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Or what would be another, something that's crucial, like, okay, the promiscuity or not, like that would be a red light. So there are some things you can eliminate a person for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, so this person doesn't have any red lights. There might be some yellow lights, and those yellow lights might turn red or they might turn green. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's like this checklist that says yes. This is whole fascinating topic of mate selection.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it has to do with when you yourself are ready to make a commitment to somebody and who is available at that time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of somebody meets you. Um, okay, some things are more important to people than other things are. And so if something's important to you, and some people it might be physical appearance, some people it might be financial stability, some people might be intelligence, it might be success in the world, it might be raising a family together. There are different things that are really important. So if you look at what's important to you, and does this person match you on those things that are most important, even if not on the others? So there's almost like a hierarchy of what's important to you. So it's not like, well, it should be somebody who is this, but it should be somebody who matches you on things that are important to you, or most important to you, not every single thing, but something that's important. And again, if it's a red light would be if the person does or does not have this quality, I don't want to be with them. Those are red lights. My general take is people are too quick to throw away a relationship. They're too quick to walk away from something that could be very satisfying.
Yeah.
And I think there are reasons for that. One is just our kind of throwaway society.
Yeah.
Another is our lack of understanding of what to expect, that we think it should be that romantic, half-sided love, and just the one side of it. Or that they meet difficulties and they don't know how to maneuver them. And so they think, well, this just isn't possible. We can't do this. So there are reasons people walk away from something that was possibly, it could have been a very good relationship. And there's but if you're at a stage like with me, I always wanted, I was searching for love always, despite all my emotional handicaps that I had to, I think, come to terms with. But they reached a point where I had the sense of readiness. And Joe showed up, and Joe matched me. It's like he didn't have everything that I wanted, and I had back and forth. And I said, well, am I going to hold out for my romantic ideal? Or here's a real flesh and blood person who is available and is definitely suitable. Do I want a relationship? And it was almost a conscious choice decision. And I had no idea when I committed to Joe what a fabulous person he is. I didn't even know that about him. I just had the sense that somehow he fit me. But I didn't know how smart he was. I don't know how well you know Joe, but he's off the charts. I had no idea how kind, how generous, all these different things about him. I didn't even know that at the time. And as the years go by, I keep discovering more good things.
Beautiful.
But I didn't know that. I could easily have walked away.
Yeah.
So part of it's our own readiness. Part of it's who's available, who shows up. How many alternatives do we have? If 2 or 3 people had shown up, well, which one would I have chosen? That's a tough choice. Sometimes you just follow your gut feeling on it and you make a decision and you stick with it. People make a choice, but then they back out of it or they second guess it. But it's something that you said a bit ago, if you make it happen, you create it. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
You create it, and you create it by doing those positive things to build it, which then makes it easier to deal with the negative things. Not that there aren't conflicts, every relationship is going to have some. And this is an incompatibility that is hard for a relationship to manage, is when your conflict style is different. So now I'm going off on a tangent here, but speaking of incompatibilities or what to look for or not, when some people are very good at talking things over rationally, and I'll listen to you and I'll be able to repeat back what you say and you'll listen to me and we'll talk it through and we'll come to some resolution. Other people are very avoidant. They don't want anything that's going to rock the boat. Nothing is more important than maintaining harmony. It's just not that big a deal. And the negative word is they're conflict avoidant. The positive word is they're easygoing. I mean, just side you want to look at it, like it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, but that's called conflict avoidant, or we could say easygoing. I prefer easygoing because it doesn't have the judgment sound.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then there's a type that's very volatile. They're flaring up, going at it with each other, cats and dogs. But they both understand it. They both understand it energetically, and they are comfortable with it. And if you put one of those with one of these easygoing types, they're going to feel like they're walking on eggshells all the time. And these people are going to feel like they're being pelted all the time. And so if there's an issue, they're not dealing with it the same way. This one's saying, let's say it's two parents and their son is getting into drugs and he's 14 years old. This one, it says, we got to do something about it. We have to take action. This is a catastrophe. And this one is saying, he'll outgrow it. Doesn't matter. Just let it go. Right. And those are two really different ways of dealing with the situation. So when you have different conflict styles, and the same with the one who wants to talk about it, the volatile one over here, it's going to feel like they're really dragged down, and this one's going to feel like they're being pummeled. Or they want to talk about it, and this easygoing one doesn't want to deal with it. This is hard because there's something up here, but we can't agree on how we're going to deal with that. So that kind of incompatibility is very tricky. And it's tricky for someone who's volatile to be comfortable and satisfied with somebody who's not going to match their energy, and where they have to tone themselves down. They're always feeling on too much. Or someone who's more, it's called validating. One wants to talk about it and validate each other. Where they're feeling like why can't I just have a conversation with you? Why can't we just talk about it like rational people, without getting so excited and da-da-da-da-da-da. So that difference, that incompatibility is a tough one to handle. Now, it doesn't mean the couple can't manage if there are a lot of other things going for them, but that makes it very hard to handle whatever comes up. So that's like what to avoid if possible. But in terms of what to look for, I don't know if there's, like I said, it's who fits. How much do you want a partner? And then who fits you? And sometimes people aren't looking for a partner. That's not what they want right now. They're not serious about settling down. They want to have people they can just get to know a lot of different people and see what they're like. Yeah. That's where they are. Yeah. Right now, we're talking about a more serious, committed kind of relationship. Right. And making that last. Yeah. Yeah. So let me see if I got it right. How I heard it is, so if you find yourself in a position where you're looking for a serious partnership that will be a life partnership, then you want to look for some basic things that work for you and look out for the things that absolutely won't work for you. And then just know that no matter how good the fit is, that after a certain time, you're going to have to attend to the relationship, no matter who it is. It's going to require you to show up, in my words. Yeah, exactly. Very good. That's the kind of thing you want to do when you're talking with your partner. Let me hear if I got you. Let me see if I heard you right. And then you just repeat it like you did. That's beautiful. You got it. And it's whoever you choose, you're signing up for a set of problems. Can you handle those problems? Yeah. It's not these problems, it'll be those problems. Yes. Yes. So I'm very curious. In the beginning, you talked about the divine.
how if this is true for you, how has your journey with relationships related to your journey with the divine?
Nice question. Um, it seems like the same thing from two different directions. And what I mean by that is relationship has been expanding me to understand at least one other person, but through him, like a whole kind of people who are like that, who are similar to, or just similar to him, or similar, just appreciating differences in people. So it's made it easier to open my heart to other people, but also being in a relationship and feeling loved and feeling supported has, oh gosh, has lifted my whole life to a different level, where instead of an inner insecurity and anxiousness, there's now a sense of trust and solidity.
Mm.
And with that foundation, it's a lot easier to feel open to people.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm generally more fearful of people, more kind of withdrawn, or just more reserved.
Mm-hmm.
And I can thank my parents' divorce for that. And adults who knew me when I was a child said how before then I was very gregarious and outgoing and
Yeah.
sociable. And then after that, I became withdrawn and subdued.
Yeah.
And that's how I've been since then. But coming out of it more and more.
Mm.
And having a relationship where I feel, where I'm able to trust and I feel this solidity of connection and love. As I'm saying, it makes it easier for me to feel safe around other people and more open to other people. So that's on the outward level. And then on the inward level, which is more like from meditation, of being able to settle down inside to the kindness that's there, the
Mm.
the the, the divinity that's inside, and to tap into that and to realize, oh, this is who I am.
Mm.
When I'm just settled in myself,
Yeah.
just this loving kindness, and then that starts to seep out also. So it's kind of from the inside, it's starting to come out, and then my outside relationship helps bring it in.
Mm.
It's and so I just imagine as time goes on, it'll be more of an open flow in and out. Not there now, but I can sense that and imagine that's where it's going, and that the two are complementary.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I love that.
So for me, relationships are a spiritual path. Also, it's a way to knowing God as love.
Mm. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It's been really fun. It's been a real joy